In May 1944, a group of German soldiers found themselves far from the front lines they had once known. They had been captured during the retreat across France and shipped across the English Channel. For many of them, Britain was a place they had only heard about in propaganda leaflets and whispered rumors. They expected hostility, harsh treatment, and a sharp reminder of their enemy's power. When the prisoners first arrived, they were met not with shouting or gunfire, but with a quiet, orderly camp. Rows of tents and wooden huts stretched across the open field. Guards moved calmly, performing their duties with a practiced, almost gentle efficiency. The first sight was not fearsome, yet the prisoners could not shake the unease. The mind, conditioned for conflict, is quick to assume the worst. Letters and diaries from this period reveal a mixture of relief and confusion. One soldier, writing in May 1944, noted, "We expected anger in every glance, yet the men here spoke politely. It felt unnatural." Another recalled the smell of freshly baked bread from the mess hall, carried on the cool morning air. Something as ordinary as bread seemed like a warning or a test. The soldiers were taught to believe that the enemy would show no mercy. The camp routine was precise. Roll calls, chores, and inspections marked each day. The German prisoners were assigned tasks, tending gardens, cleaning facilities, and assisting in the kitchen. Every small duty was observed, measured, recorded. Yet, amid the discipline, the captives noticed subtle gestures. A guard offering a nod of reassurance. A soldier quietly handing extra water to one of the men struggling with work. Expectations of cruelty clashed with the quiet humanity around them. Some prisoners whispered to each other at night, recounting moments of unexpected kindness. One recalled a guard helping a man carry a bucket of water without comment. Another noted a shared joke in broken German and English, laughter soft but present. These moments did not erase fear, but they planted seeds of disbelief. Before capture, propaganda painted the Allies as ruthless. German soldiers were told that surrender meant humiliation, perhaps worse. Yet here, the lines between enemy and human began to blur. The psychological weight of expectation, the constant readiness for aggression, was met with a calm, steady reality. Diaries from June 1944 describe long walks around the camp, soldiers observing life unfold in measured routines, a kettle boiling, a garden being watered, the sun catching on a fence post. Small things, ordinary things, felt monumental. The prisoners began to observe not just actions, but emotions. They noticed quiet expressions of care among the guards. A soldier saw a young guard pause to tie his boots before a labor detail. Another observed the guard softly speaking to a stray dog, bending down so the animal could approach without fear. To men trained to expect hostility, such details were astonishing. Letters smuggled or sent home during this time often carried coded amazement. One soldier wrote, "They are not monsters. I do not understand this world." Another admitted fear mingled with gratitude. "I expected bars and shouting. Instead, I find gardens and calm voices. It confuses the heart." These internal conflicts, the clash of expectation with reality, were common. Even within the group of prisoners, reactions varied. Some remained suspicious, eyes scanning for hidden threats. Others began to relax slightly, acknowledging small kindnesses without fully trusting them. The psychological strain was subtle but constant. Soldiers found themselves analyzing every gesture, every phrase, measuring it against a lifetime of indoctrination. Preparations for daily routines also carried tension. Every movement was cautious. A walk to the mess hall could feel like a test of vigilance. Even as the captives encountered warmth, the mind remained trained for danger. Many wrote of the difficulty in reconciling what they felt with what they had been taught. "I want to believe them," one diary entry reads, "yet my body tightens as if expecting a trap." The anticipation of food, rest, and conversation was often more overwhelming than the fear of punishment. One prisoner described the first proper meal after days of forced marches and limited rations. The smell of potatoes boiled in milk made me stop walking. I wanted to run and eat, yet I feared they might be poisoned. This hesitation illustrates the deep imprint of wartime expectation. Even small acts of humanity caused internal debate. A guard offering extra butter for bread sparked both gratitude and disbelief. Another moment, a shared cigarette among prisoners during evening chores, became a silent reassurance of normalcy. Each gesture, though minor, was magnified by the prisoner's anticipation of hostility. As the days passed, more prisoners began to notice patterns. Discipline was firm but not harsh. Food was given in measured portions, sufficient but never indulgent. Guards maintained authority but also observed fair treatment. A soldier wrote, "I begin to see order, not cruelty. It is strange, unsettling, yet real." The prisoners were also witnesses to the quiet lives of their captors. Women in the camp kitchens moved with efficiency and care. Soldiers maintained lawns, washed dishes, repaired equipment. Life continued with an unexpected rhythm, almost mundane, almost ordinary. Yet for men who expected chaos, these routines carried a profound weight. The psychological impact of this environment cannot be understated. Expectation shaped perception. For weeks, prisoners lived in anticipation of punishment, imagining insults, labor, and humiliation. When those expectations were unmet, disbelief became an emotional strain. Some wrote of sleeping poorly, haunted by thoughts of impending danger that never came. Others described a strange sense of peace, cautious and tentative. Preparations for work, inspections, and roll calls became small micro moments of testing reality. A guard checking tent would pause, smile briefly, then move on. The men noticed these small pauses and gestures as indicators of human decency. Observation became a quiet survival strategy, a way to reconcile indoctrinated fear with lived experience. The first weeks were also marked by reflection. Many prisoners wrote about families left behind, the war at home, and the contrast between expectation and reality. A young soldier, writing in June 1944, reflected, "I thought surrender meant shame. Now I see it as stillness, as possibility. But I fear that understanding too soon may be dangerous." Fear, hope, and disbelief intertwined in the same breath. During evenings, prisoners often gathered in small groups, sharing impressions quietly. They exchanged observations about the behavior of guards, the routines of the camp, the small kindnesses that punctuated their days. One wrote, "It is almost like we are allowed to exist without fear. It is strange and frightening." The tension between expectation and experience created a subtle, persistent psychological strain. The prisoners' perceptions were shaped not only by acts of humanity, but by the absence of cruelty. Days passed without yelling, without humiliation, without arbitrary punishment. The mind, conditioned to anticipate the worst, struggled to interpret the absence of threat. Some soldiers feared that any comfort was temporary, that punishment would follow. Others began to relax slightly, though never fully. Letters to home often contained veiled descriptions of this unexpected treatment. "The men here are quiet, orderly," one soldier wrote. "It is not what we expected. I cannot describe it fully. I do not trust it completely, yet I must acknowledge it." The gap between belief and reality created an emotional tension that many described as both disorienting and revealing. In these first weeks, anticipation became a lens through which every detail was magnified. The way a guard handed out bread, the way a hut was cleaned, the way sunlight fell across the camp, all became markers of trust, caution, and human connection. Soldiers trained to fear the enemy were learning to see subtle gestures, to interpret humanity in unexpected ways. Some prisoners began small personal projects, tending gardens, organizing books, writing letters. These acts were private and deliberate, exercises in reclaiming a sense of self. Observing the calm efficiency of their captors, they found permission to engage in small routines without fear. A diary from late May 1944 notes, "I plant the seeds slowly, watching the soil. The guard passes. He nods. No word, no judgment. I am startled by this quiet." The months of May and June 1944 were formative. Expectation and anticipation created a tension that framed every moment of camp life. The prisoners learned to navigate between distrust and observation, between fear and cautious acceptance. Each day brought small, silent lessons in humanity, lessons they had never imagined they would encounter in a prisoner of war camp. By the end of Part 1, the German soldiers stood at a threshold. Their beliefs about enemy behavior, shaped by propaganda and fear, had been challenged. The world they had imagined, the hostile, cruel enemy, did not fully exist. Yet the experience was far from resolved. What awaited them in the coming weeks would test the limits of trust, challenge their expectations even further, and reveal humanity in ways they could never have foreseen. The days turned into weeks, and the German prisoners continued to navigate a world they had never imagined. By June 1944, what had begun as disbelief became a slow, cautious understanding. The expected hostility remained absent. Instead, they found routine, order, and small acts of unexpected care. It began in the mess hall. Soldiers who had anticipated rations handed out grudgingly or food given with contempt instead faced tables laden with simple, nourishing meals. Bread, porridge, vegetables, and occasionally meat were provided in abundance compared to the meager portions they had been used to. The first time one young soldier bit into a thick slice of bread with butter, he froze. He wrote later, "I could not comprehend that food could be given freely, without expectation, without insult." Others shared similar astonishment. The camps were quiet, but not lifeless. Guards moved among the prisoners, supervising work and maintaining order, but without harshness. One letter described the moment when a guard bent down to tie a man's shoelace that had come undone during a morning task. No comment was made, no attention drawn, simply a quiet act of human consideration. The men began to notice these gestures and to catalog them in their minds, each small kindness conflicting with years of indoctrination. Many prisoners began to record these experiences in diaries. One man wrote, "I see them smile, and I am afraid it is a trap. Yet the smiles continue, small, quiet, without threat." Another noted, "They speak to us politely. Even when correcting us, there is no anger. I cannot reconcile this with what I expected." Some prisoners began to form subtle routines of their own. Gardening became more than a duty. It became a quiet solace. Letters described men planting vegetables, tending flowers, watching tiny shoots emerge from the soil. A guard would sometimes pass by, nodding silently, and the prisoner felt seen but not threatened. It was a form of connection that seemed impossible, yet existed in plain sight. Unexpected interactions occurred in small ways. A prisoner recalled a guard quietly handing him an extra cup of tea on a chilly morning. Another wrote about a small dog that wandered through the camp freely, allowed by the guards. Seeing the animal approach without fear, the men were reminded of a world beyond war, beyond propaganda. Each encounter challenged their assumptions about the enemy. The psychological impact of these experiences was profound. Soldiers trained to expect cruelty began to question their own reactions. One man admitted in a diary, "I flinch at every movement, yet nothing comes. My heart pounds and I am not in danger. I do not know how to feel." This constant tension between instinct and reality became the defining feature of camp life. Letters sent home were cautious in tone. Prisoners described the food, the order, the calm of the camp, often struggling to put words to the experience. "We are treated fairly, though I cannot explain it to you," one wrote. "It is as if the world has shifted. I fear trusting it fully." Fear and gratitude coexisted, each day reinforcing both emotions in equal measure. Prisoners also observed the lives of their captors outside strict duty. They noticed women in the kitchens moving efficiently, yet with care. Soldiers repaired equipment with focus, but not urgency. The routines of everyday life continued alongside captivity, and this juxtaposition highlighted the humanity of the world beyond war. One striking example came from a group of prisoners assigned to clean the camp hospital. They saw the medical staff treating both Allied and German soldiers with equal attention. A man recalled, "I watched them bandage a wound, gently, speaking softly. There was no question of enemy or friend, it was simply care. I could not stop staring. I did not know this world existed." Another profound moment occurred during a music session. Prisoners were allowed to play instruments or sing quietly. A soldier wrote, "I sang a hymn I remembered from home. The guards stood nearby, silent, listening. I expected mockery or anger. There was none. Only presence, only attention." Small moments like these carried more weight than any grand act of kindness could. The tension between expectation and reality created long nights of reflection. Soldiers lay awake, considering what they had seen. Many wrote about the internal struggle, gratitude mixed with suspicion, relief tempered by disbelief. One diary entry reads, "I do not trust it, yet I cannot deny it. They are kind, yet I was taught to fear them. My mind is not quiet." This new perception of the enemy began to reshape daily interactions. Prisoners started to respond differently. They approached work with care, engaged with guards more respectfully, and began to take pride in small achievements, such as tending gardens or assisting in the kitchen. Each act became a quiet negotiation with reality, a test of trust. Humanity appeared in unexpected ways. A guard quietly handed a prisoner a handkerchief when he sneezed. Another silently offered an umbrella on a rainy morning. The captives recorded these details meticulously, as if cataloging evidence of a world that contradicted everything they had believed. Letters and diaries increasingly reflected this shift. One soldier wrote, "I do not understand it. Each day I see kindness and patience. I am unaccustomed to such things. I am afraid to accept it, yet I cannot resist." Another noted, "Even small gestures, the way the guards walk, the way they speak, are lessons in patience, in attention, in care. I am learning, slowly." By mid-1944, a sense of rhythm had settled over the camp. Soldiers moved through their days with a cautious confidence. They still observed every interaction carefully, but they began to recognize patterns of behavior, predict routines, and respond with measured trust. The lessons were subtle yet profound, that decency exists even in conflict, that human care can appear in unexpected forms, and that expectation does not always dictate reality. Some of the most poignant reflections came from the prisoners' own self-awareness. They recognized that their shock was not just at the kindness of the captors, but at the contrast with their own indoctrination. One diary reads, "I realize now how much I was taught to hate, to fear. I see it in myself. And yet here, I am learning to see another way." The months continued with a quiet consistency. Prisoners observed and absorbed. They watched the guards, the routines, the small acts of care. They tended gardens, washed dishes, repaired tools, and in doing so, they noticed not just the actions of others, but their own responses. Each day was a lesson in perspective. Each moment a reflection on expectation and reality. Letters home now carried something remarkable. Soldiers described the camp without fear, with measured gratitude. They recounted the small, ordinary details that revealed human kindness, a smile, a gesture, a quiet presence. "We are alive," one soldier wrote, "and treated with decency. I cannot explain it fully, but it exists." The prisoners also began to reflect on their own humanity. Many had entered captivity expecting only punishment and humiliation. Instead, they found routine, care, and subtle guidance. The world they had feared was not cruel. It was simply different from what they had imagined. And in this quiet, measured environment, they discovered a capacity to trust, to observe, and to reflect. By late 1944, the impact of this experience was clear. Diaries and letters reveal men transformed by the juxtaposition of expectation and reality. The shock of kindness had not erased the memory of war, but it had reshaped their perception of humanity. One soldier wrote, "I believed the world outside our borders would be merciless. I now know that small acts can be powerful, that attention, patience, and care can exist anywhere, even in war." In the end, the German POW story is not one of grand heroics or dramatic reversals. It is a story of quiet discovery, of noticing, of internal reflection. They learn that fear often exaggerates, that expectation can blind, and that humanity may appear where it is least anticipated. As they prepared to leave the camps, many carried with them the lessons of observation and reflection. They had seen a world that contradicted everything they had been taught. And while they returned to the uncertainties of wartime Europe, the memory of calm, measured kindness endured. For these men, captivity became more than survival. It became a lens through which they could understand the subtleties of human behavior. They learned that compassion could exist in ordinary routines, that care could be quiet and unobtrusive, and that expectation does not always define reality. And so, in the most unexpected place, far from home, amid the structure of a prisoner of war camp, German soldiers encountered humanity, not in grand gestures, not in speeches or proclamations, but in the silent, deliberate, and careful actions of ordinary people. It is a story that reminds us, even in times of conflict, that human decency can appear quietly, patiently, and without fanfare. And for those who expect cruelty, the smallest act of care can leave the deepest impression.